Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the latest edition of the Woke Bros. I am your host, Nando Vila. My regular co-host Waz is still on vacation. He may never come back. I don't know. He's out in Colombia. He's partying it up in Cartagena. I don't know. He may never come back to our little program. I'm gonna have to start maybe thinking about a new co-host. But if he does come back, I think it'll be next week, not this week. This week I have a very special guest. We're doing something a little bit different than what we usually do on this show. We have with us today Hugo Soto-Martinez. Hugo is running for city council in Los Angeles in District 13. We spend a lot of time, wondering about Biden. What are they going to do? Are the Democrats going to do anything in Congress? Are they going to pass the bill or whatever? And you know what? Real power in America, or a lot of real power in America, lies at the local level, which we don't usually pay attention to. So I think it's important to talk local politics. So I'm very excited to have you, Hugo. How are you doing?
Yeah, thanks. I'm doing well. Happy to be here. And to answer your question, the Democrats will do something if we push them to do it. So
if we push them,
I think you know that.
Exactly.
I think you know that.
So can you just explain very quickly what does a city council member do? What is that job? I don't know what does a city council member do?
Yeah, well, in Los Angeles, the city council member has a lot of power. People describe it as having a weak mayor, and so council member, it's basically like little mini mayors, and so it's broken up into 15 districts, and they get to make decisions on essentially everything within their district. That's housing policy, how the homeless are treated, the bike paths, bus lanes, a whole bunch of stuff. The jobs that are created there. They basically have a lot of decision power over what it looks like in their district. And so city councils have, in some ways, more power than the mayor, how to influence the district.
And what inspired you to run in the first place? I mean, I can imagine it's difficult to run for office. Certainly, especially an office that's not, I wouldn't say it's like you said, it's very powerful, but it's not like the sexiest office.
No.
My son, he's a city council member, and you're like, that doesn't sound as sexy as like, oh, my son is a congressman or something.
Yeah, not as sexy, that's for sure. I think my mom will still be very proud.
Of course.
But it's definitely not the same. What inspired me? Well, I'm a lifelong Angelino. I grew up in South Central. My parents were street vendors growing up. I went to school in Watts and some of the more neglected areas of the city. And when I was 23 years old, I was working at a hotel, and the union, which I now belong to, started organizing my workplace. And we won. I felt we won a lot of things, healthcare, health insurance, healthcare with wages, pension, most importantly, respect on the job, and the ability to just continue to fight, as things come up. We didn't have a voice before that. And so anyways, to answer your question is, I've been following politics since then very, 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 very intensely. And recently I've noticed a shift, that activists and organizers are starting to run, and they won. They actually won in some of the districts.
Yeah.
And so I think back to the civil rights movement, and there was an incredible article written by Bayard Rustin that said, at the height of the civil rights movement, the thing that they should have done, or the thing he was suggesting at the time, was that we use that power in the grassroots and take over seats of power in the state. And so we never did it in the civil rights movement, but the right wing did, right? And now they're passing a lot of terrible laws across the country. And so anyway, so I see that change, I see that shift, and been organizing for 15 years all across the city, and said, you know what? Let's go for it. Let's do this for the working class. So that's why.
You mentioned Bayard Rustin, and man, you might have the keys to my heart. Bayard Rustin is like the underrated civil rights hero. He's been kind of almost erased, but he was absolutely key, and I thought had a very like a very clear political message and political theory. On this show we talk about labor organizing a lot as the real bedrock for any progressive change anywhere, not just in the United States, but anywhere in the world. Really, like progress does not happen without labor power. And so, can you talk about what that experience was like for you when you helped to organize your workplace?
Yeah, I mean, it was by far the most transformational event in my life. Growing up grew up in South Central to street vendor parents, being out in the street, selling with them, child in tow. There, my mom was like selling stuff. You don't need to be told what side of the fence you're on. Right? You know who has power, who doesn't have power. And even while I was working and going to school, I was practicing to be a pre-law, and I'm reading up the codes and looking up all the the labor laws of this country. I could cite them to my boss, and I always felt like they had some sort of respect for me and like sort of deference, because like, oh, he wants to go to be a lawyer. But it never changed the conditions of the workplace,
right?
As much as I wanted it to do, right? As much as I fought for that. When we won the union and we marched on the boss, a bunch of us workers, we went straight to the boss and we said, we want to have a union. I thought I was going to get fired because I was assigned to lead that delegation, right? And the opposite happened. We were respected.
Right.
That collective power that we were able to create, it turned the dynamics of power on its head. And I remember, walking into work the next day and managers were like shaking my hand and, like, what can we do for you? You need anything, And I was like, wow, this is incredible. This worked. After years of like fighting on my own, I was like, this actually worked. And it's a feeling that I'm never going to forget because I continue to do it with other workers. Right? As an organizer, I've inspired people and pushed them and drawn out their inner strength and their inner leadership to do it for themselves. And so every time I see it, it was that moment for myself, but every time I see it happening, I relive it, and I'm like, this is incredible. This is incredible.
Yeah. And it's pretty remarkable what's happening in LA at the city council level. We've talked about on this show, we've talked about Nithya Raman's run a little bit. She won power. There's a few other kind of, what we would call like left-wing people in the city council. We're seeing kind of a slowly but surely, both in New York and Los Angeles and Chicago, this sort of three biggest cities in America, some lefty people, maybe even some socialists becoming a city council member. How much do you feel like you're part of a larger movement?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. Like the labor movement took, to its point, it took, 20 years to create, from the late 80s when a few unions were organizing undocumented workers, which was like the increase of immigration. That's my parents, right? My parents were that group of people. In the 90s, becoming citizens, that was my dad. My dad became a citizen, became a voter. Labor movement continued to push, and it created sort of this area where people it became more progressive, more grassroots. As soon as I saw that sprouting, the seeds were starting to sprout. After Bernie, I was looking at DSA and I was like, oh, it's another Occupy movement. They're gonna go away. It's funny because you saw it, right? I started in 2006, and so I saw the mega marches for immigration. They fizzled out.
Yeah.
The labor movement was.
I remember those. People don't see the kids these days. You and I, we're old. We're in our mid to late 30s.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, you still look great. Don't get me wrong. You still
Thank
look
you.
great. But
You need
yeah.
to do.
Thank you. But the kids these days, all these all these like lefty kids that have like, ooh, like Lenin is my bae in their Twitter handle. They don't remember the heady days of 2006, the massive immigrant marches, like massive, which totally
Yeah.
caught, like, I think like the mainstream news and for lack of a better term, like white people were just like, wait, where the fuck did these people come out? Like it just like happened overnight, and they were just like, where did these people come out of? But they were like massive.
Yeah. Yeah. Massive marches. I mean, I think LA had like 1 million people. That was the estimate.
Yeah.
I mean, so the mega marches, SB 1070 in Arizona, happened. That was a big deal for the immigrant community. That was 2010 for all the young kids out there. And Occupy was a little bit after, and then Bernie, and then DSA started sprouting, and I was like, oh, they're not going away. Like, I need to get in here because I'd been in the union for, at that time, 12 years, and I was like, I need to spread my wings a little more because I need to I need to go help. I need to do as much as I can. I need to do as just inspire and bring my teachers into the labor movement. So now that it's coming to fruition, I'm like, it's kind of cool. Been around for a while, and I think we're gonna win.
Nice. And so I gotta ask you, I live in LA. I'm a transplant. I'm from Miami originally, but I moved here in 2016. So I'm relatively. I've been here 5 years or almost 6 years. But I'm still relatively new. The issue that basically everyone talks about all the time here is kind of, I mean, I would say the number one issue is homelessness, the housing crisis in LA.
Right.
Why is it so bad here, and what would you do to fix it if you got in there?
Wow. I mean, why is it so bad?
Where to start?
Yeah, where to start, right? I mean, look, I think growing up, we had Skid Row. Nobody paid attention because it was contained. And it was in downtown. Yeah. I remember that. I remember growing up. And then the encampments started spreading to areas that were a little more working class, right? I remember they're sprouted in South Central. All of a sudden, right, these tents started popping up in Los Feliz, right?
Yeah.
And it's now a citywide issue, right? Or we used to be in Venice too.
Yeah. That's where I live. I live in Venice.
Yeah. So Venice always had homeless, but now it's wherever there was before. There's more, and where there wasn't any, there's some now. But these are policies that were implemented for 40 years, right? We neglected to address the issue. The kind of housing we're building is not affordable. Areas are being gentrified. The number one issue people enter homelessness because of economic hardship. That's 60% of people enter into homelessness. So these issues are all, and I think the pandemic just put like it put a fire in the tinderbox. And so this has been like decades and decades of a creation, right? And so what I would do differently, number one, I think that as a union organizer, that is one of the most effective ways to transfer wealth, right? To transfer from the companies to the workers. So I would definitely be supportive of any unionized efforts in my district, without a doubt. The city's money is, half of the discretionary funds are given to the police. That's not helping the problem, right? We need to take some of that money and put it where it's needed, in the communities, social programs, jobs programs. The community has been crying for jobs, for opportunities for as long as this country has been created. We need to finally address that. And most importantly, I think wherever the city's resources are used, like homeless advocacy groups, we need to make sure that they're paid well. These folks are paid like close to minimum wage. Like we're using our city funds to recreate the system that is creating homelessness. It's just ridiculous. It's like we need to use the power of our purse to make sure that good jobs are created and make sure they're unionized as well. But it's a lot to do, but we gotta start somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's here in Venice. I talk to people because I mean, there's a big kind of brouhaha over the city council member, like kind of in this district, a guy named Mike Bonan, and I talk to people because there's like this big recall, or I
Yeah.
don't know how big it is, but you see signs on the streets and people talk about it, and I'm like, but what are you so mad about? And they're like, well, he's finding housing for the homeless people here, and I'm like, yeah, that's what you're supposed to do. He's like, no, we want them like away.
Yeah.
If they find them housing here, then they're gonna stay here. And I'm like, well, I mean, if everyone says that, then they're like everyone kind of if everyone says that, then you know what I'm saying? Like
Right. Right.
how do you fight against that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, organizing is a lot about meeting people where they're at, and I think a lot of those comments, and by the way, had a little bit of experience here in the neighborhood council, which I participate in. And I think that when folks see something like that, they're having just like a very personal uh, reaction to it, right? Now, what I have found is once you start working through that, there are opportunities to try to find common ground. Now, there's some people you're never going to convince. You're never going to
Yeah.
convince. They're like, I want to banish them. I don't want to see them, and that's fine with me. But that's a minority of the people in Los Angeles. I think the majority of folks, once you explain and show a lot of the statistics and the reasons, I think most people come around. And so, when I organize workers in the union, we never get 100% of the people to support the union. And I think the same case is going to be here. There's always going to be those folks that you unfortunately can't convince, but I think most folks are pretty reasonable on this issue.
I want to ask about the LAPD and our sheriff, like,
Oh
who
my gosh.
I was not aware of. I was not aware of until I was walking my dog on the boardwalk in Venice, and I saw this fucking guy just doing like a whole media thing. I was like, what is this? And then I kind of looked into it, and he did have his hat on. He had his hat on. He was looking like you know, like a rhinestone cowboy. But he and there was this big investigation by Knockout LA, I think, about like there's gangs in the LAPD. What is going on? We always knew that. I mean, I watched, I've seen Don't Be a Menace to Us. Like, I know the LAPD, they're not to be trusted, but what is going on with Villanueva and these gangs in the LAPD?
I mean, it has been exposed, right, that these gangs exist within the department. I mean, look, Villanueva has not made any friends with the working class community or a lot of communities in LA. But I think the real thing that exposed everything was the killing of Andres Guardado, if I'm not mistaken, because all of a sudden there's whistleblowers coming out, saying that Andres was killed as an initiation for the executioners in Compton. And, Cerise Castle, who did the article with Knock, did a lot of public records requests and looked through a ton of evidence, right, and found that these gangs are everywhere. And Andres was not just, it was one example of those gangs, having this initiation right. So it's unfortunate because, a lot of people supported Villanueva, right? Progressive groups supported Villanueva. I mean, the labor movement supported Villanueva. He came in as a so-called progressive candidate, and it's turned out like he's worse than Baca, right? And some of the worst things in the city. So, I mean, yeah, he's like way worse than we've ever seen at the sheriff. I mean, this is worse than the Rampart scandal, of the 90s.
Yeah.
So there's a lot happening. It's like continues to be in the media. I think it's galvanized a lot of folks around this issue. So, hopefully we can turn some positive things out of this. But yeah, it's a lot has been exposed.
It's just crazy. Like, it's just it's wild to think about. Like that the police, turns out they're not so nice sometimes. Like, in the words of Trump, like not the nicest, not the like it's just a very crazy thing to to think about. I mean, it's just, what kind of reform can you do when it's that kind of like literal gangs?
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, one thing that I work on a coalition. Well, anyway, Andres, there's a connection to Andres because he was the son of one of our members, one of my
Oh
coworkers.
wow.
Yeah, so after that killing, we got connected with the Sheriff's Coalition, and they're really it's an amazing coalition. BLMLA, ACLU, SoCal are part of it. It's the NLG, and one of the things they're pushing for is a charter amendment to have oversight over the sheriff, because unfortunately, he's an elected official, and many times folks take up as other elected officials. In this case, the board of supervisors who oversee his budget, they have some power over him because of that. But many times they say, well, we can't do anything. He's an elected official. So the charter amendment, what it would do is make an amendment to the county charter so that essentially giving the board of supervisors impeachment power over the sheriff. And so if the majority voted, they could kick him out. And so, that is a structural change. That's a very powerful tool that they're trying to create as far as accountability, because all the other tools we've created, whether it's the oversight commission or giving subpoena power for a lot of these killings, like he's just ignoring them. Right? Yeah. And so now we have to go a step further and say, well, law is not being followed, then we can impeach the Villanueva. Right? Yeah. So that's something people have been thinking about doing.
Yeah. I want to ask about climate change, and here in California or in LA, in Southern California, I mean, the big effect, I mean, outside of like the drought and all that stuff is the fires. The fires are fucking terrifying. Climate change is one of those issues. I mean, it's obviously a global issue. Things that happen on the other side of the world have effects here. But like, what can you do at the local level to help climate change?
Oh, there's a ton of things we can do. SoCal Gas.
I pay them every month.
Yeah, exactly. I think they're the largest gas company in the country. But they're not. There's no accountability for them, right? We had the Aliso Canyon blowout, and nothing, right? And so I think one of the things that we're doing that's very aggressive is saying, if the city has a contract with SoCal Gas, then they have to be accountable for the pollution and the lack of attention they've given to infrastructure. We can't have another blowout where methane, which is more dangerous than CO2, just spill out with no consequences. That is ridiculous, right? So when folks talk about the fires, we got to talk about, well, who's contributing to this? And SoCal Gas is one of them. Aside from that, in the district, the electrification of buildings is one thing that I've been working with the coalition. So essentially saying every new building that's built in the city, make it electric, make sure there's no gas pipelines going in there. That is something Berkeley has done. We should do it here. And encouraging, building out more protected bike lanes, make public transportation easier and convenient for folks, and make sure that they have access to that. Those are all things that the city council member can do. They can push for the SoCal Gas contract. Definitely within the district, those buildings, make sure they're electrified or LED certified, gold, at least LED gold minimum, and put in the bike lanes. That is a lot of power that city council can do. So, if we win, we're gonna go to town on these things because it's a crisis, right?
But what if I was like a rich real estate guy and I was like, Hugo, when you win, here's the bag of money with the little dollar sign on it, how do you, what say you then? What are you gonna tell the rich real estate guy then when that happens?
I'm gonna say to him, the same thing I tell these hotel owners when we fight contracts, right? I'm not here to represent you. I'm not, and that happens a lot in the union fights. It's like you're fighting these multinational and they have resources and power. And, they can hurt the workers in many ways. But you got to have courage. You got to have strength. You got to know that the power you're building in the community can withstand the attacks of these rich guys. It's not the money that is the tempting. Is do they have the power to take me out? In 4 years, and you got to have faith in the people, right? When we fight these corporations, we're telling people we're gonna win, but we got to do it together. And there's fear, of course, there's fear, but working through that fear, working through fighting someone who's incredibly powerful. I've been there, done that. That stuff is like, you gotta have faith. You gotta have faith in the people who elect you. So we're gonna run like an incredibly progressive campaign, and we're gonna have faith in the people that if those guys come after us, we'll be fine.
Talk to me a little bit about the process of running for office in the city. I'm thinking like, one of the big structural advantages that say rich people have is that they can just like simply stop working for a while because they have so much money and just run a campaign. They're just like, well, I have $5 million in the bank. I can just take it months. What's it like to run a campaign while I'm assuming you still have a full-time job?
Yes, I am still very much working class. I have a full-time job. It's been it hasn't increased my workload because I've had to take things off my plate. Less things with my neighborhood council, a little less with DSA. But it's hard. It's hard. And one of the things that I've realized in this process is how inaccessible it is for working people, and how the voices of folks who are closest to the problems will almost never be heard. I have to work 2 jobs, and I've met other candidates who are like, my husband is, rich and I could do this. And, luckily I have some money, and I'm just like, it is really unfair. But yeah, it's been somewhat of a challenge, but again, I'm very lucky to have a community that is like a team and a community that have been incredibly supportive. And it's been really nice. In some parts it's been surprising because people who are excited and know me have done a lot of help as well.
It sounds like there's maybe a lot of paperwork. Do you have to fill out a lot of forms? That sounds like a nightmare. Is like a lot of paperwork involved, or what?
There's a lot of questionnaires for sure, from different organizations. And I first thought, I was like, oh, all the questionnaires, they're all going to be the same. I'm like, it'll just be a similar question wrapped in a different, No, it's not. People have very specific questions, so definitely the questionnaires take up quite a bit of time.
Yeah. And I remember when Nithya was running, Hillary Clinton, good friend of the show, she listens to every episode.
Hi, Hillary. How are you?
Yeah, you just say hi to Hillary. She endorsed her opponent. What was his name? Ryu or Caillou or something?
David Ryu.
David Ryu. And then Bernie endorsed Nithya, and it became kind of like this national thing. Do you expect Hillary to endorse you, or no?
I think Hillary and I have some pretty big differences on a lot of the way we see the world. So I maybe not this time. Maybe in my second term when
you take the real estate money.
Exactly. Like, oh, hey, now what's up? Can we be friends? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, sorry. We don't want to get you in trouble with like someone like clipping this out of context.
True. I feel I'm gonna get scolded after this. Somebody on my campaign.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but we're hoping to get Bernie's endorsement. It'll be. I want to do. What was those memes? It was like 10 years ago, and then now.
Yeah.
In 2012, when he first ran, before he declared for candidacy, I flew to Iowa to meet him because I was going to quit the union to work on his campaign. And so I ate brisket with Bernie Sanders in Des Moines, Iowa. And so I can't wait to put my this is then, this is now
right
when we do and get his endorsement.
I love the idea that you're like, Bernie, I'm just so inspired by your message, and I'll do anything to, I'll work so hard for you. And he's like, "Oh, this brisket is really delicious, don't you think? I love it when the brisket just melts in your mouth."
He hasn't changed from the first time I saw him live. I was like, it's the same Bernie.
Yeah. Well, do you have an opponent yet or not yet?
Yeah, we're taking on the incumbent, and there's a few other people who are running as well. So, but
who's the incumbent? What do we got? Why don't we like this person?
So the incumbent is his name is Mitchell Farrell. Well, I mean, I think there's, depending on who you are, right? There might be a lot of reasons why you wouldn't vote for this person. But I think the one thing that made national news is, bringing hundreds of armed officers to Echo Park Lake, to essentially arrest a very small number of homeless. And most of them had been put in, temporary housing. And a bunch of people, protesting, exerting their First Amendment rights. We spent over $1 million, and it made national news. Journalists were arrested. Somebody had their arm broken. That is not the way you treat the unhoused, and it's also not the way you treat people who are protesting. And so I think that's probably the one reason people have heard of the most. But there are, that guy can have a list of things that I can cite personally that I don't agree with his position.
Yeah. Well, where can the people listening at home follow you? How can they get involved? What can they do to help? We need to stand up to Hillary Clinton. How do we do
that? Yeah, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram. We don't have a TikTok yet, so we might get.
Dude, what are you doing? The Zoomers, this important voting coalition. They're all like farther left than than anyone. They're like Lenin. These people or Mao. These little Zoomers. They're terrifying. You need to get on TikTok to get these voters.
Yeah, we have a strategy meeting about this.
Seriously.
You might see me doing those. What do you call this? Little. I don't even know. I've seen.
Yeah, I don't know. We're past. We're older than 30, so we don't know how any of it works. This is. Yeah.
But folks can find us on Hugo, my name, for CD13, our Instagram or Twitter, or go to our website. My name, Hugo2022.com. You'll see our platform. Check us up on Twitter. We have a very important comedy show coming up next Monday. But Instagram and Twitter are probably the best ways to.
What's going on in this comedy show? Who's performing?
Well, Tim Heidecker is performing.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, the guy's a genius.
You got Tim. For people who don't know, Tim from Tim and Eric. Wow, that's a good get.
Yeah, he's performing. A few other folks are performing too, but one of our campaign staff, knows some of these folks, and very helpful, very happy for their support.
Nice. Well, Hugo, thank you so much for joining us. Good luck in the campaign. I'm sure it's gonna have your ups and your downs, and your what have yous, but victory in the end, and it's all that matters. So good luck.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for having me. And then next time we can geek out over Bayard Rustin, why he has a key.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We will. We'll do a whole show dedicated to him. The kids need to know. They don't know. He's been erased from the textbooks. It's very sad.
And then we'll move on to Ella Baker and some other.
There you go. Absolutely.